Hi, so this is an update. I wasn't planning on doing so, but again, things happened the way they did, and the situation ended up here, in what I call being ridiculous. Would note that I'm going off a script right now, so excuse me for doing so, but last time I could barely edit this on my PC because it was always running out of memory. So a few days ago, after release of my previous video, talking about the past few years of my life as a solo developer, I'll link it here and in the description as well, when thanks for those devs who reached out to me wishing for the best. It once again became clear that my current project, Deep Sea Claustrophobia, a tiny game where you operate a submarine, won't be finished at all because I'm playing with fire doing so, which is something I was told. To be honest, it was an exhausting fight keeping it alive this long, as there were a bunch of extra work and pressure behind the scenes I didn't talk about. And I'm really backed up in a corner here, as mentioned previously, so there wasn't much else I could have done. Although, funny thing is that I still see the game rise for some reason in popularity on IndieDB. It's 25th at the moment, for some reason. Instead, I try to salvage the situation in saving my entire self proclaimed career with that accidental discovery I told you about in the previous video, by hoping to bring back an old project of mine. You know, the fantasy game with the dwarves shining a radically different light on them, as well as telling a different story, which was praised by that industry veteran, as said, who also worked at a larger publisher beforehand. Solely based on the fact that it's the one and only palpable thing I managed to scrape together over the years, in terms of industry support, if we can call that. Yeah, the one time when a publisher actually encouraged me to make a game is the only thing I have at this point. No connections, no networking, no nothing. Again, partially because of my location. Which is why I said I was still a nobody in the biz. Which is a massive problem when you're hoping to get funding and you don't have a team, or a studio, nor a long-standing list of commercially successful games, and so forth. But my situation only enabled this much. So I hope that by opening with the statement of, look, this project was praised by somebody more important than me in the biz, someone who you can trust. So at least you could chat with me for a moment, that it would bring in the buttload of money that you're looking for, right? No. So this was the part where it got really interesting, ridiculous, more like, because when this project was first introduced, it was one of the most analyzed projects to date, as said previously, whilst I was talking about the buzz. This time, however, it became the least visited one. The interest is so damn non-existent for it so far after reaching out to, 30-something publishers/VCs. None of them replied, excluding the one that I had direct email to, whom threw this project out less than 12 hours sending the email, citing, and I quote, doing a disservice for the project. Or that one big US publisher who for some reason stormed my website, meaning multiple people from multiple PCs browsed it, and I thought it would go somewhere, but never did. I even reached out to people who were apparently on vacation and still took their time to reply, so there was some kind of interest there. And I'm not really sure what the problem was at this point. In fact, I went out of my way to make sure it's a smooth sailing experience to get to know me and the project while sending out cold emails as best as I could, provided I had an explanation, whilst keeping the relevant info digestible and somewhat professional. Would have loved to find out more about this, but as I mentioned before, communication is strictly one way and there's no way of telling how far it went up the chain or who filtered the project or where it could be nudged the right direction, making it impossible for me to make adjustments or provide explanations if someone's on the fence. This is what business correspondence shouldn't be about, but don't ask anyone. Which is why it took 5 or so years for someone to take notice of me, because they didn't brush it off the second they saw my attempts. 5 years is a long time for getting any form of recognition. So I'm sitting here as the bomb is ticking and about to blow up in my face, chasing those loose threads in hopes that I could make something different and share it all. And I was thinking about this the other day as to why I'm doing all of this. Is it the money, the fame, hoping to fix my life, make my dream game, which technically doesn't exist because I never really thought about such, or maybe someone told me so? No, not really, because I'll be damned if I let all of this work, my experience and knowledge, and all the hardships, both physical and mental, ones that left a mark on me and are continuously making my life more difficult, go to waste, like that. Because as said, I'm in a situation where this will end here, my career that is, if it's not working out, which is outside of my reach of influence, unfortunately. Despite all of this, I'm still a strong believer that my goals, the manifesto I briefly mentioned about, values and making games that last, for the long term is still worth fighting for as well, because I just don't see games in the mainstream that tick all the boxes I'm looking for. Something that's second nature for me, but almost alien to most, it feels like, probably being biased here. Yet those are the ones that stay for the longest. So here's where it gets murky. How do you even define what you cannot? Been agonizing over this, because I wanted to somehow label and categorize the essence of what makes my craft different, to make it more digestible for everyone to understand, but it's been a struggle to come even close to materializing the whole concept. Like, there isn't a word that comes even close to describing it, let alone mean exactly what it's supposed to do. Let's take complexity as an example. It can mean interconnectedness, as well as individual parts that are local but have an emergent behavior on the macro level, or can mean the difficulty to understand something in itself, which is a problem when you wish to describe why you and your game are different, and why publishers should bother themselves. Words in this particular scenario can be the differentiator between getting funding or not. This is especially frustrating when I'm sitting here and trying to persuade others to believe in my vision, when I can't even properly describe it without needing to go on a mile-long tangent and a plethora of examples that differentiate and point out. If I say personal taste, then what does that even mean? Aesthetics, dialect choice, subject matter. The list goes on, especially if you look at how certain words can have multiple meanings based on who interprets them. And my grunge here is that most of the time even those aren't useful in describing things. Say if you have a house built out of scrap materials, but was rendered with a finish that's pleasing to look at and hides it all, it's still, the foundations will be still lacking, which will give you this sense of uncanny. And by the way, what does even pleasing mean? This is why it's always easier to refer to something that already exists as a basis of comparison. But how do you do that when there isn't one? Well, seemingly. Me yapping about stories that make you think or characters that speak for themselves can only take you so far. You need to see them in action, how you execute the lines, how you handle the experience from one page to another. So should I just show my example of short stories then? This is why I usually say that my style is more about subject matter that is more refined, more involved with what an adult would enjoy, that is looking for more than entertainment for adolescents. Or define my taste in music that of great composers of orchestrated music. This all sounds boring. But then I say go watch the Lord of the Rings movies and you might begin to understand what I'm talking about, which is funny because when described it could also sound similarly flat. At this point I kind of feel like the trope of the misunderstood artist that I'm claiming to be, making these sweeping grandiose statements of stories and adventures with music that can stand on its own, orchestrated by your innate desire to interact, rather than what's commonplace in industry. The latter is what I usually call a binary approach, which makes most things this clinically sterile phenomenon, usually ending up in discomfort for the player. So here I am, hoping to make this epic creation one of many, and I keep wondering why it is not working at all, even with this newfound wind in my sails. So all in all, this is where things are at the moment, which is not the best feeling in the world as you can imagine, especially knowing that you've something in your grasp, but cannot utilize it and keep getting hit by this brick wall over and over and over again. So you've tuned in to watch my ongoing saga of I don't even know what, and I'm not sure where this will go, if it'll go anywhere, that's all. These are just the realities that I've been talking about. Hope you found it somewhat interesting. Thanks for watching. Take care.